English translation 539th Contact Tuesday, the 1st of May 2012, 15:12 hours.
There you are, dear friend. It is really good that we correct the reports of the conversations with Bernadette every time. If this had not been the case, the two words would have been missing twice in the two sentences. Unfortunately, when I take in the transmissions of the conversations, it always happens that sometimes a word is left out when I type the transmission into the computer.
This is understandable when you consider that everything is transmitted as quickly as it was also spoken. There are word omissions and possible spelling mistakes that cannot be avoided, which is why we also do the correction work. However, when I consider that your typing speed is very fast and that you only have one hand at your disposal, this is an extremely unusual achievement, which even two-handed typists would have to make great efforts to achieve.
Today, however, the computer works better than the Adler electric typewriter.
Of course, but still.
Never mind. Here I have some questions. The first one is one that I have been asked again and again lately. Namely, who will win the 2012 presidential election in the USA, whether it will be Obama or the Republican Mitt Romney, and if it is the latter, what kind of human being he is. You have already told me who will win the election, and I also accept your official silence about that. So this question falls away. But the question of what kind of human being the man Romney is remains open. Do you have the necessary knowledge about this, and if so, can you talk about it?
In short words, this man is one who cannot be called a do-gooder in any way, because he is an unpredictable, unscrupulous, and cold-bloodedly calculating psychopath, driven by a lust for power and completely lacking in compassion for his fellow human beings. With your words, you would say that he walks over dead bodies without hesitation. Nothing more is to be said about the assessment of this man.
So a hard-nosed, power-hungry man who, as a ruler, can break all evil from the pile if he should take the helm. Then a question regarding the so-called light food, which we have already talked about in private on several occasions. Again and again, some earthlings get the crazy idea that they can only feed on light, and then, of course, slowly starve, die of thirst, and finally die. Such a case has now happened again. Because certain human beings on Earth are unteachable in this respect, that the whole thing is a complete nonsense of pathologically stupid religious sectarians, who move mainly in esoteric circles. There are even such morbidly stupid ones who attend light food seminars, which are organized for them by profiteers, and who take the money they have earned out of their pockets. Unfortunately, the stupid and the faithful do not die out. And it is unbelievable what nonsense about the alleged eating light is spread on the internet. Just search in Google under light food, and you will find the craziest light eaters and their bottomless claims, scams, lies, and shenanigans.
The so-called light food actually corresponds to an absolute nonsense or just an imbecility, as you say. In the whole universe, there is neither the human beings nor any other material life form that could feed on light, because each one of them needs a certain material food, even all microorganisms of all kinds. In relation to the human beings alone, they need solid and liquid food and healing substances, which they cannot replace by anything else in order to maintain their biological and medical metabolism, note Billy == metabolism. If the human beings do not eat and do not drink, they inevitably die of starvation and thirst, which may be associated with various ailments and pains, but ultimately also with hallucinations and affective delusions. This is not just about money, it is about the lives of good believers. Complete abstinence from food and drink is absolutely deadly for the human beings. If, however, someone claims to be able to master the eating of light and to live only on light, then he can no longer be classified as fully sane from the point of view of his mind and reason. And if someone nevertheless claims to master this naturally impossible and absolutely deadly process, he is not dealing with the truth, but with untruth. If in this respect the human beings who are faithfully decayed are also taught the nonsense of eating light through seminars, then the seminar leaders are guilty of murder or killing as perpetrators or as helpers. If seminar participants die by imitating the fact that they can live without solid food and without drinking, but only by eating light.
Not even a spirit form can nourish itself from light, for since it is of spirit energetic nature, it needs the cosmic electromagnetic and spirit energetic life energy as nourishment. Some religiously, sectarian and esoterically inspired fanatics and believers claim time and again that some saints or God-blessed, etc., such as the allegedly stigmatized and dubious Therese Neumann von Konnersreuth, etc., who died on the 18th of September 1962 in the last century, had not taken any drink or food for months or even years. But as your father Svath, your daughter Simyase and Quetzal and you have already explained, this is only based on fraud, lies, and deceit, because these alleged light-eaters secretly took food and drink, even when alleged witnesses claimed and still claim the opposite.
What you say is correct to a large extent, because it is indeed the case that all allegations are nothing but fraud, lies, deceit, and trickery, when the human beings claimed or still claim that as light-eaters they have eaten or would eat their life with light food alone. And also the statements of witnesses who have observed and confirm an alleged light-eating of some light-feeding people over a long period of time fall into the same frame of untruth, because either such lies are spread consciously, or the witnesses were and are deceived by the so-called light-eaters through swindling and trickery, etc. The origin of the alleged light-eating is indeed, as you say, found among religious, sectarian and esoteric unscrupulous fanatics, delusional believers and confused phantoms, etc., and as far as Therese Neumann von Konnersreuth is concerned, I am aware of the matter concerning this woman. To this it must be said that the whole thing was a swindle, which was basically only made correct by the religious fanaticism of a priest named Joseph Neber. However, this was not so much because the woman allegedly did not eat or drink, but because the suggestions of the pastor, who suffered from a delusion of help, caused a delusion of suffering in the woman who had fallen victim to religious sectarian hysteria, through which she became widely known as an alleged stigmatized person. In truth, all her suffering was no more than a medical and psychopsychiatric problem, as is the case with all cases of stigmatization, but also with a so-called possession.
Then a question about sugar. You once mentioned that excessive sugar consumption, especially crystal sugar, has various unpleasant effects on the health and behavior of the human beings, like aggression, etc. Whereas artificial sugars, respectively, chemical sweeteners, cause suffering, such as various types of cancer.
I explained this to you during our conversation on the 26th of November 2008. Excessive sugar consumption leads to severe aggressions, to outbursts of anger, as well as to obesity and physical damage, poor wound healing, and to inertness of consciousness, thoughts, and feelings. And as far as artificial sweeteners are concerned, what you say is correct.
Your answer is already enough. Thanks. Piri Reis was an admiral of the Ottoman fleet and cartographer, born 1470 in Konya, Turkey. He was beheaded in 1554 or 1555 in Cairo. He produced the so-called Piri Reis map, which phantoms claim is based on prehistoric astronaut photographs. Already your daughter Simyase as well as Quetzal said that these claims were nonsense. Could you say something more detailed about this, please?
That is correct, because the Piri Reis chart is nothing more than an Ottoman nautical chart of the Central Atlantic, which is attributed to Admiral Piri Reis. The chart is dated to the month of Muharram, the 9th of March to the 17th of April of the Islamic year 919, which corresponds to the year 1513 of the Christian calendar. It has been in the library of the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul, Turkey since 1929, when it was discovered for historical research. The map is a camel-skin parchment and in Ottoman language, but with Arabic characters. There is also a book by Piri Reis, from which this map is taken Bahriya, from 2 editorial offices from 1521 and 1524. The Piri Reis map is drawn by Piri ben Haji Muhammad, who was known as the nephew of Kamal Reis. The map shows long-known areas of Western Europe, the Mediterranean, and North Africa, as well as coastlines of West Africa and North and South America. These coastlines of Europe, Africa, and South America correspond in various respects to the actual situation, but at the same time they also contain serious errors and inaccuracies. Strongly magnified are land points such as bays, estuaries, and islands, which served as navigation aids. In terms of ambiguity, for example, the upper left-hand part of the map contains fragments which do not provide any clear information, but which probably correspond to the land points of the Gulf of Mexico, although this cannot be clearly determined. In the lower left part of the map, fragments are drawn, which point to the north coast of South America or South America. In the southern part of the east coast of South America, the mouth of the Rio de la Plata itself, and further down also Antarctica, could be visible. So a lot of data could still be cited, but this would lead much too far, so I will limit myself to what has been said and only briefly mention the creation of the map. In this respect, it is to be said that it is of course clear nonsense to claim that the Piri Reis map is based on prehistoric photographs taken by astronautes in prehistoric times. The truth is that Piri Reis used the information contained in the map from more than 30 pre-existing foreign maps to produce his map, including cartographic material from Juan de la Cosa, Alberto Cantino, Christopher Columbus, the Spanish and Portuguese navigators, etc., all of whom had better maps than the Piri Reis map. So he used already existing and foreign maps and description material, but he made some very serious mistakes, which also caused inaccuracies.
Then that is also clear. So now I want to ask what is actually involved with concentrated feed for cows. But I asked you last year, whereupon you said that you first had to work out exact clarifications in this regard. Have you been able to do this in the meantime?
Florina and Njana have taken on this task because they are in constant use for the inspection work on Earth. It has emerged from their very precise investigations that the so-called concentrated feed which is produced for cattle and also for other animals is an irresponsible absurdity. Concentrated feed is mainly produced from various types of grain and from maize, from meat and fish meal and from seafood, etc., in enormous quantities, which are then fed to cattle and other animals and also to poultry. In the case of cattle, this is to increase milk production, but also meat production, as is the case with other farm animals and poultry. However, cattle in particular, as well as other livestock and poultry, are highly susceptible to disease as a result of concentrated feed, which is why they are given antibiotics in large and irresponsible quantities at the same time as concentrated feed. As a result, the milk of cows, sheep and goats, etc., and their meat is contaminated with antibiotics and is reabsorbed by the human beings when they consume the animal products as food. But this inevitably means that when they fall ill with some diseases, they can no longer be treated with antibiotics because they become more and more immune to them. In addition, the animals that are maltreated with antibiotics release their excrements into the water and into the natural cycle, as is also the case with antibiotics, which are absorbed by the human beings as a medical product and are partly excreted again. The human beings, animals, and creatures then reabsorb parts of these excretions in terms of food, because they are deposited in the water and soil and reabsorbed by the food plants. In the wild, this leads to harmful mutations, body and organ deformations in animals and all creatures, as well as infertility, as is the case with the human beings, although there is also the direct excessive medical antibiotic medication, which leads to serious damage to health. And the fact is that all the human beings' food processed and refined into concentrated feed, as well as into fuel for motor vehicles, could feed millions of people and stop the Great Famine in various countries. And it is also a fact that the nutritious meat of cattle and all other farm animals and poultry would be much more valuable and better enjoyed if they were not fed on concentrated feed and antibiotics. And thirdly, it is an undeniable fact that if cows, sheep, and goats and all other dairy animals were fed purely naturally, their milk would be much better and even healthier. Milk, especially that from cows, is not particularly recommendable from a health point of view, as I explained earlier, but on the other hand, it can be very useful again in various ways. And if farm animals and poultry were given only their natural feed, they too would be much healthier and less prone to disease. This is also true of animals and birds, etc., which are kept as so-called pets for pleasure and humanization, etc., which is a bad habit and unhygienic behavior through which many diseases are transmitted to the human beings. If farm animals were fed according to their nature, they and the human beings would suffer less disease and other disadvantages. Although the milk production of cows, sheep, and goats and mares, etc. would be lower, this would make up for the better health of the human beings and animals. But when we talk about concentrated feed for animals and poultry, etc., we must also denounce the fact that the irresponsibly high and ever-increasing overpopulation is leading to an inexorable increase in food requirements and to more and more famine. In order to get to grips with this problem of the ever-increasing amount of food needed by the human beings, more and more farm animals and poultry are being bred in mass rearing, in the tens of millions. And of course, they can no longer be fed on natural feed alone, so they must be turned into human food, which is processed into animal feed and fed to the animals, and poultry. However, this intensive farming of cattle, livestock, and poultry is not harmless either, because all these creatures, which number in the billions, such as cattle, horses, and other mammals, as well as poultry, livestock, birds, fish, and other terrestrial and aquatic organisms, make a major contribution to the greenhouse effect. Of the approximately 75% of what is harmful to nature through human fault and causes climate change and the greenhouse effect, around 23% is in the form of greenhouse gases from all farm animals, poultry, and air and water creatures. These are the main facts provided by Florina and Enjana's investigations and study, although there is much more to explain, but explaining it would probably not bear fruit, because all those involved in the concentrated feed industry will not listen to it. Neither farmers and breeders, nor concentrated feed producers, nor the scientists and technicians, etc., involved in the whole.
That is unfortunately the case. I also realize that because the greed for profit is boundless. But there is one more question about the psychopathy you mentioned in relation to the U.S. presidential candidate. If psychopathy in general is mentioned, what are the peculiarities of psychopaths? Respectively, what are the evil and negative characteristics and patterns of behavior by which they can be recognized?
To recognize psychopaths as such is basically difficult for the layman, because psychopathy is often also accompanied by an almost perfect acting talent. Consequently, even specialists in the worldly sphere are deceived by this and issue false judgments and certificates of value for psychopaths. This is not surprising. However, when one considers that on Earth such professionals as psychologists and psychiatrists are very often self-absorbed in terms of their abilities and overestimate their ability and understanding, and consequently misjudgments often occur.
Which is of course disputed by these professionals.
What happens out of self-protection and arrogance, etc., but listen to what is to be considered in relation to the behavior patterns of psychopaths in many different relationships. There are many factors which I will list in an authoritative wise. For example, psychopaths usually have a greater number of the following unworthy values. Number 1, lack of logical decisions. Number 2, lack of rational action. Number 3, acting irresponsibly. Number 4, multiple changes of sexual partners. Number 5, pathological lying, mendacity. Number 6, unsustainable promises, breaking them. Number 7, exaggerated thoughts and feelings in relation to the values of one's own personality. Number 8, false respectively played charm. Number 9, boredom. Number 10, fraudulent behavior. Number 11, parasitism. Number 12, lack of real and long-term objectives in a variety of ways. Number 13, manipulative behavior with regard to fellow human beings. Number 14, selfish lifestyle. Number 15, dazzling respectively beguiling and deceiving your fellow men. Number 16, lack of sense of guilt. Number 17, lack of behavior control. Number 18, unpredictability. Number 19, self-importance according to the principle, after me the flood. Number 20, consciencelessness. Number 21, addiction to libel. Number 22, sense of injustice. Number 23, strong lack of emotion through corresponding thoughts. Number 24, death penalty advocacy. Number 25, advocacy of torture. Number 26, hate behavior. Number 27, egoism. Number 28, tendency to malice, deceit. Number 29, fraudulent manipulative behavior. Number 30, lack of insight into guilt. Number 31, lack of responsibility. Number 32, lack of profound thoughts and feelings. Number 33, lack of behavior control. Number 34, lack of personal responsibility. Number 35, lack of concern and compassion. Number 36, lack of long-term and realistic objectives. Number 37, remorse. Number 38, lack of empathy. Number 39, cold thoughts and feelings. Number 40, irresponsibility towards fellow human beings. Number 41, readiness for revenge and retribution. Number 42, intriguity. Number 43, power behavior, greed for power. Number 44, irresponsible talking. Number 45, irresponsible action. Number 46, great criminal energy in many different ways. Number 47, very extreme impulsiveness. Number 48, violation of laws, recommendations, regulations, requirements, prohibitions, and instructions, etc. Number 49, breach of promises. Number 50, lack of self-control. Number 51, dishonesty. Number 52, disloyalty. Number 53, unscrupulousness. Number 54, authoritarian. Number 55, tendency to sadism. Number 56, falseness, deviousness. Number 57, readiness for combat and war. Number 58, addiction to profit. Number 59, greediness. Number 60, antisocial behavior. Number 61, tendency to harassment, bullying. Number 62, self-praise, self-adulation. Number 63, tendency to denounce. Number 64, pathological morbidity. Number 65, lack of joy. Number 66, lack of empathy. Number 67, strong negativity. Number 68, tendencies to cheat and deceit. Number 69, lack of self-knowledge. Number 70, indifference. These are the 70 most important behavioral factors inherent to psychopaths. The whole is a scale according to which the human being can judge himself as well as other human beings in relation to a psychopathic character pattern. The 70 negative characteristics listed are considered to be the benchmark for the given standard of psychopathy. It is to be judged in such a way that the more of the characteristics apply to one's own personality or to another person, the more a psychopathic pattern of behavior is given. If 18 of the 70 negative qualities mentioned above apply to the human being himself or herself or to another person, then we must speak of a comprehensive and profound psychopathy.
Thanks. This is a clear statement of the factors that make up a psychopathy. But what is it like when more than 18 of the above-mentioned characteristics apply to the human beings? Is it possible to speak of a psychopathy that is becoming more and more profound?
This is in fact true, because the more of the negative qualities mentioned appear, the more profound and pathological, respectively morbid, the psychopathy is. But this also means that even if only a few of the negatively listed characteristics appear in the human beings, there is already a more or less psychopathic pattern of behavior. But if the number of 18 of the negative qualities is reached, then, as I said, there is a comprehensively deep and pathological psychopathy, which under certain circumstances can also be genetic, because every form of psychopathy is hereditary.
So just like religious belief, respectively, belief in God and the extreme fanaticism associated with it.
Yes, that is correct. But now, dear friend, I want to discuss some things with you that are not supposed to be official.
Well, go ahead and shoot, because I have no further questions.
Then I want to begin.